the woke perspective on this is the people who rise up really high just kind of trim off their surplus and give it to the low people to bring them up. That's kind of the woke ideal.
Yes, but they're so obsessed with finance. It's like, it doesn't matter if you take away everyone's money. Each of these people within the next generation will do it again. Mm-hmm. Like, the redistribution isn't going to stop this at all. Like, you still have kids that are then going to be raised in certain ways that then promote all of these attractive attributes.
Right. Well, I believe that's what you're saying is mostly true. And what we need to do is have like a acculturation or cultural evolution where more and more kids are taught and cultivated to become more and more attractive.
Whoa. That's like, once again, that was the thing you said was going to be a live wire. But not if we defined attractiveness in the way that we have in this show.
No, if we define it in the way we have in the show, it's just like teaching people how to be kind and how to have integrity and how to have compassion and how to have a good sense of humor.
Right. Yeah, that's it. And embrace their ability to communicate effectively.
Yes, and I believe that if a school, like I told this story last week, that I know a teacher who works in a school and some student called her a fucking bitch and she couldn't punish the student because of this woke equality, no, don't punish anyone ever. That's not teaching that girl to be kind or have integrity or to be respectful of other people.
No, the removal of all consequences is very serious. That falls into exactly what you said of enabling.
Yes.
What are you enabling in that case?
Horrible misbehavior and disrespect and inconsiderateness of other people.
Very unattractive qualities.
Yes.
Like that should be the next show. What are all of these traits, skills, and qualities that make you horribly unattractive? And if you are in this society horribly unattractive, what happens to you?
Yeah. Well, and part of this important psychological insight here is that I think the woke society kind of wants to be nice to everyone. And the reality is to cultivate attractive qualities, sometimes you have to be not so nice to people. And you have to, punish or give consequences or be mean to people. You even have to kind of, I think, shame people a little bit. Not toxic shame, but judicious shame. I think you even kind of have to shame people a little bit to get them to work hard, be considerate to others, blah, blah, blah. And the woke, they don't like to be mean to children or to be mean to poor people or to be mean to minorities or to be mean to disabled people or to be mean to trans people.
Well, I want to agree with you, but that's not true. They're very mean to my son, who appears to be very white.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They target him and they put him in detention falsely. And that part is unfortunate, where in his school, he is disproportionately targeted for crimes of whiteness, even though he's not, right? He's obviously biracial.
We now bring you Enter the Freud.
This is for entertainment purposes only. It is no way medical advice.
The Enlightenment values, woven in there is meritocracy. This idea that if you work harder, you should get more, basically.
Yeah.
And the woke argument is like, that's not fair because different people are differently abled and the system isn't equal. The system is corrupt and unequal. So when some people come out with more money or hotter girlfriends or more power, that might not have been a consequence of a fair system. And the woke it really focuses on all the inequalities of the system. And that's true. There are inequalities in the system, and I think it's good to focus on that, and I think it's good to try to change that. But now I think the next level, maybe let me do my stage thing because I love 3 stages. So stage 1 is enlightenment values meritocracy. A fairly simple, straightforward, if you work harder, you should get more. And then the woke critique of that is like, wait, guys, that's too simple. It's not always equal. There's a lot of inequalities. We need to like focus on the inequalities, which is true. Okay, I think the next level that the woke people don't get, and actually I don't think hardly anyone gets, and I think it a little bit comes from psychology, though we can see it in sociology and politics, is kind of like enabling. It's sort of like, and kind of like the recognition that there are inequalities and that life is hard, and if we're not like tough on people and kind of have a little bit of a like, dude, you got to fucking work hard and kind of push people. If we don't, then people sink down and become lazy and entitled and spoiled and fat and addicted to video games and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So I think the level 2 woke thing, yeah, there's some truths there, but they don't recognize what I would call enabling. And I think for the woke thing to graduate to the next level, there needs to be this reckoning with enabling and the world's not fair and blah, 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 blah. Like imagine you have 2 kids and one of your kids gets A's on the spelling test. One of your kids is failing the spelling test, right?
Yeah.
And you just say, oh, let's do equity and we're going to give my kid who's failing, we're going to give him 10 bonus points on his score and now he's getting A's too. And now it's like, well, wait, so now he just doesn't have to study to get an A on the spelling test. So he learns to not study. So he gets worse and worse and worse at spelling. And
Correct.
like now equity fucked over your kid who you just artificially inflated his grade because you wanted both kids to have the same grade so that they could both feel good about themselves.
Great example. It's what happens here in Fairfax County. Like if you turn in 0 work, you get a 51.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm serious.
Yeah.
I'm totally serious. If you don't take a single test, you never turn it in any work, you get a 51, right? Like, oh, wow. How incredible, right? Like,
yeah, the grade thing it's nuts, but the grade inflation, there's all these studies that show it. And there's lots of schools increasingly that are just doing away with grades because, again, grades is like a meritocracy thing. And the woke thing thinks that's bad. And so equity applied in this way to grades, maybe there's occasionally some kid who has a learning disability or whatever that it works for. But mostly it just makes kids think that they don't have to fucking work hard or study.
Right, which goes totally against all of these attributes of the individual, cultivating these capacities away from being incels. This is all the way to the other end of the extreme, right?
Totally.
Like what I think you're pointing out is what is so clearly a phenomenon of failure to launch and incels, right?
Yep.
It's becoming the number is going to be staggering if this continues. If you were born in the year that we were born, in 1975, like you have inherited tons of Enlightenment values. Mm-hmm. But then as time goes on, now there's a lot of sayings like, oh no, some of these Enlightenment values are bad. And of course, the most extreme is like to read and write and use math is white and therefore bad. It's part of the patriarchy. It's a form of supremacy.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like that again, postmodern philosophy, that is absurd. I don't run into these people. I only see it on social media where it's like young people who are going up and espousing these ideas of like, yes, there's multiple answers in mathematics. Right? Like to show up on time is a sign of oppression. Right? And it's like, whoa. Yeah, well, can you tell us just a bit about the critique above the Enlightenment, the critique of Enlightenment and then the critique of woke?
Yeah, so the critique of Enlightenment is, it's sort of like, because in theory, Enlightenment is meritocracy. So it's like whoever, maybe let me give some kind of more specific example. if we have a bunch of people in a village in the woods and they're all farmers, and one of the dudes farms really hard and makes a lot more food, and the other people don't farm as hard and they don't make as much food. The meritocracy is like, the dude who worked harder got more food, so it's fair. So in that kind of simple world, the meritocracy thing is fair. But then imagine those farmers, fast forward a few generations, and the one guy who worked really hard, he built up a bigger, nicer farmstead and more farming tools and got more land because he was clever. And a few generations go by, and now there's this unequal system where that dude's children and grandchildren are born with all of these luxuries to have their life be better, and they have better education. And now the inequalities are just like compounding. And now this guy's grandchildren now become sort of tyrants, and they sort of enslave everyone. And they're like, what the fuck? It's equal. It's all equal. Like my grandpa, whatever. And it's like, no, that's not equal anymore. So as the systems of economics get more and more complicated, simple meritocracy isn't always equal anymore. And that's the woke critique of meritocracy. And it's true.
No, but I have to, and I know it's true, but I have to bring you back to the individual. What is with that grandfather as an individual? How did you say he worked harder, but it's like, he didn't just go in the field and dig longer. Like, maybe he did, but he also might have had more confidence and embraced sense of humor, and then had ambition, authenticity, and on goes the list of intelligence, leadership. He might have been an incredible leader, and he got tons of people together, and they all worked collectively. Like there's nothing more woke than that, right?
Yeah, that's true. And so on that level, that's cool. But then the consequences across time start to be that he and his children and his grandchildren have these advantages. Or we could even say he has advantages. He maybe was just born stronger, smarter, more charismatic, and that's not equal. He was born with better genetic or whatever traits, or maybe his parents raised him better, and so he developed these better traits. And so it's not equal that he has much more food than his neighbors, and maybe one winter when his neighbors are starving and he's not, the fair equity thing to do is to share food with his neighbors. And he should do that, and I agree. And maybe a government should be instituted in this village that tries to distribute food a little bit more equal. And that's the woke idea, and I agree with that. However, now the third thing is, but if the government starts to distribute the food more equally, that might enable laziness amongst people. Yeah. And we have to account for that. We have to pay attention to that. We cannot be enabling laziness or whatever else. It gets very complicated. But when you start to give handouts, when you start to do equity things, enabling can happen. Or even worse, shaming of enlightenment values can happen.
Thank you. That's where that's something I think is really important. I love that you bring up the idea of enabling. I don't think enough is really pointed out about that. There's definitely people are really keen on pointing out like, oh, this is shaming, right?
Yep.